Irama did an awesome job. I think I maybe should have been her warm-up act. I just want to say thank you to Irama, to Ron, to all of my mom's amazing organizers and volunteers here on campus and across Michigan. I was so excited to learn that almost 1,300 people registered to vote just over the 3 move-in days here. So, because as Irama said, I do think this is the most important presidential election of my lifetime because everything that I care most about is at stake. So I just want to give a couple of reasons why I'm so proud to be here on behalf of my mom. I also should acknowledge up front, as I try to always do, I'm deeply and unapologetically biased towards her. I'm really, really proud to be her daughter. But I like to think, even if I weren't her daughter, I would still be just as passionate about her campaign and just as excited to vote for her. So I just want to give a couple of reasons why. One that relates to kind of where we're all standing or sitting this evening, and then another to something that's happening this week. So Irama talked about college affordability and accessibility. It matters to me that my mom is the only person running for president who has a real plan about college affordability and accessibility, who actually tells you how she's going to pay for it. And although it is called the New College Compact, it also applies to graduate school because she knows that so many of our dreams don't end after we graduate from college. So what is she proposing? Well, for people that already have higher education debt, that's almost 1 million people right here in Michigan, federal loans would automatically reset to the prevailing interest rate. Now that matters because right now interest rates are low in our country and we can renegotiate our mortgages and our car loans. We should be able to have our federal student loans reset to the lowest rate. That'll save people on average about $2,000 a year. And she believes everyone should be able to repay whatever loans they then have left as a percentage of their income, that no one should ever pay more than 10% of their income because people shouldn't have to make professional choices to service their student loan debt. Now that matters to my mom because when my mom graduated from law school, she had a lot of debt. She paid for law school through working a summer job and taking out loans, largely held by Yale, where she went to law school. And when she graduated from law school, Yale said to her, if you take a public interest job, you have a grace period. You don't have to pay back your student loan until you actually start earning a real income. That enabled my mom to go work for the Children's Defense Fund. She never could have gone to work for the Children's Defense Fund if she had to worry about immediately paying off her student loan. So she believes no one should ever have to pay more than 10% of their income in loan repayment, and that people who work for organizations like the Children's Defense Fund or people who work as teachers, as nurses or doctors in high-need areas, as police officers, as firefighters, that that service should act as repayment toward your loans, and that that should be true for college and graduate student loans, and that anyone should be able to go to community college tuition-free, and that anyone that comes from a family earning $125,000 or less, which is about 90% of Michigan families, should be able to go to public colleges and universities tuition-free. And she does expect states like Michigan to stop cutting funding for public universities and colleges as part of that New College Compact. So for your friends or the people that you are willing to stop on the sidewalk, like Irama, the 3 boys in the story that she shared, when people say that this election might be irrelevant to them, talk to them about college affordability. Talk to them about whether they want to go to law school like Irama does, or medical school, or to get a PhD, because this election is relevant to all of us. Just the second I think, significant issue that has been on my mind a lot this week before I open it up to whatever may be on your minds or in your hearts as you think about this election. This week, as some of you may know, is Opioid and Heroin Overdose Awareness Week. Now, arguably, that should be every week because we now lose more people to opioid and heroin overdose than we do to car crashes in our country. In 2014, the last year we have good data from, we lost more than 47,000 people. This is a public health crisis in our country. And we have to focus on the prevention and treatment sides of this challenge together. And my mom is the only person who has a plan that does that. So she knows we need to invest more in prevention, particularly at the high school and college level. And we need to provide funding directly to communities where the need for treatment is not met by the facilities available. Because there are places across our country where people have to wait 3, 6, even 9 months for treatment. So people who are raising their hands and saying, I want help, and there isn't space in the local clinics or hospitals to help them. So we have to build capacity because anyone who wants help should be able to get help to recover from their addiction. And we need to train first responders, our EMTs, our police officers, our firefighters, in the use of naloxone, which is the antidote that immediately reverses an opioid or heroin overdose. We need to work with medical schools to train doctors and with professional associations to train doctors that are already practicing in proper pain prescription management. Because we don't want people to not get the drugs they need. We also don't want anyone to be vulnerable to addiction. And this is important when we think about both opioid overuse but also heroin. Because people who are addicted to opioids are 40 times more likely to later get addicted to heroin. So there's a lot that we have to do. And this is something that my mom is the only person running for president I hear talk about, and I do pay a fair bit of attention to who else is running. We can talk about that too. Because no one should die of an overdose in America in the 21st century. And we also need to reform our criminal justice system so that nonviolent drug offenders are getting the treatment they deserve and not being sent to prison. So we have a lot of work to do to, as Arama said, protect the progress that has been made, the progress that President Obama, I think, gets far too little credit for having made in the last 8 years, and continue the work that still has to be done, whether we're talking about higher education affordability, drug prevention, criminal justice reform, protecting and restoring voting rights across our country, and everything else that is at stake in this election. So those are just 2 things that I was thinking about on my way here. I'm sorry that I was a little late. Thank you all for waiting. I clearly want to talk to as many people as possible about what's at stake in this election and why I'm such an emphatic supporter of my mom's as a daughter, even more so as a mother. I now have 2 kids. Also as a woman, as a Democrat, as a progressive, kind of as every label that I'm proud to wear. So just again, thank you so much to my mom's organizers and all of you for being here. And if you have questions, I would really welcome them. And I see some kids in the audience, and it might be past your bedtime, but thank you for being here and staying. And you don't have to be old enough to vote to ask a question. Because, oh, she applauded, the little girl that I see. Yeah, you should applaud for your shout-outs in life. Because this election is always fundamentally about the future. So we have some microphones up front, but you probably can't get there, so you can also just raise your hands, and I will unscientifically call on people just across the room, and you'll shout out, and hopefully I'll hear you. But if the little girl does have a question, I would start with her. But if she doesn't, I think I just intimidated her. We'll start with someone else. Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Mary Kate Green. I am a freshman here at Michigan State, and like you, I am constantly inspired by my mother. Previously, she'd worked for a church that was very progressive and liberal, but all of a sudden they came out and were against LGBTQ rights, and so she quit because my brother's gay. Now she is a teacher of special ed at a middle school in a very rural area, and every day she comes home and she works 6 hours to make sure that all of her work is done for all these kids that are not as fortunate as anyone else is. And I was just wondering, what kind of resources is your mother planning on allocating to special education?
Thank you so much for asking this question. As you may or may not know, when my mom took her first job at the Children's Defense Fund, she worked on 3 things largely over her few years there. She worked, one, to expose the segregation academies, which were all white schools in the South. She worked in Alabama that were diverting public funds to private segregated schools. She worked in South Carolina to get young men, largely young African American men, who were trapped in the adult prison system back to the juvenile system so that they candidly would be safer. Also so that they could get their constitutional right to an education, and so that if their sentences ended when they turned 18, they could get out and weren't just going to be caught in the adult prison system. The third thing that she worked on was to build the case for the right of every child in our country, regardless of disability, to a free, quality public education. And although that is now the law in our country, we're not living up to the spirit of the law. And so my mom thinks we need to do a few things. One, in school districts and in schools that have a disproportionate percentage of Title I students, so Title I students are students that are on free and reduced lunch plans, and it's the best kind of metric we have for assessing poverty in a school district or a school. The federal government should be providing support directly to those school districts and schools. That's something that we did in the 1990s when my dad was in office. And that's important because in many of those districts, we're expecting teachers to be all things to all students. We're expecting teachers to be special needs teachers, even if they're not trained to do that. We're expecting teachers to be school nurses. We're expecting teachers to be social workers, as someone just said to my right. I'm going to Flint again tomorrow. In the Flint School District, last year, there was 1 school nurse and there were 2 social workers. In a school district where the case shouldn't have to be made for the importance of school nurses and social workers. So we have to actually put teachers and parents back in the center of the conversation about education and support the schools and the districts in a way that does that. And we need to be providing more training and support, particularly to our special needs teachers. And that has to be a partnership between the federal government, the state, and local school districts. That's something that my mom fought for when she was in the Senate, and it's something she thinks must be part of her job as president. And yesterday she actually gave a speech about kind of her full agenda for ensuring that all Americans, regardless of disability, can fully participate in our country. Because something that I always find a lot of people find surprising is that it is still legal to pay Americans with disabilities less than 1/3 of the federal minimum wage. How many of you knew that? So that's appalling in 2016 in the United States of America. So we need to ensure that we're supporting Americans with disabilities in our public school system, but also kind of in work, in kind of housing, kind of in every part of our country, because I think that's right to the core values of what it should mean to be an American. So thank you for your question, and thank you to your mother for standing up for your brother and for all of us, and for being a special needs teacher standing up again for those students and for all of us. So thank you very much. Thank you. Other questions? Oh gosh. Yes. Yes. Here, I'll share my microphone with you.
Hi, my name is Ariane Berry, and I'm from Harbor Springs, Michigan. It's like up north. It's up north. So my mom came from a family of 8 kids. She was the only girl, and when you turned 18, you left the house and you got a job. There was no money to go to college back then. She is an inspiration in my life, like your mom is in yours. My mom single-handedly worked through awful jobs and is now paying for my education with no, by the time I graduate, she's made it so that I will have no loans whatsoever, which is amazing. And now, at 57 years old, my mom is going back after she's taken care of my education to get her own. She's getting a bachelor's degree in business. So, yeah. About 13 years ago, my grandmother, her mom developed Alzheimer's disease. And for 10 years, my mom quite literally watched her mother forget who she was. I know that the Alzheimer's Administration something that's very close to your mother's heart, so I was just wondering, like, what kind of resources are available for families who suffer from a family member who does have Alzheimer's disease?
Thank you for your question. And thank you for showing me on the map of your Michigan hand where you're from. For those of you that couldn't hear, she shared that her grandmother suffered from Alzheimer's, and that her mother had to watch as her mother forgot who she was and had to help take care of her. My mother was part of the Alzheimer's caucus when she was in the Senate, and this is another area where she's the only person running for president who has a real fleshed out plan. So a few things. One, we need to be investing more into Alzheimer's research, particularly because many of the scientists that work in Alzheimer's research say that we are at a tipping point. So we're very close to hopefully being able to develop a vaccine, as well as early effective treatments. So to help people who are at risk for Alzheimer's to hopefully not develop Alzheimer's, and to help people be diagnosed early so that the Alzheimer's doesn't progress. Two, we know that we need to be doing more to support caregivers. Something that my mom fought for consistently in the Senate was something called a caregiver tax credit, to recognize the tens of billions of dollars in kind of free care that, of course, we provide our loved ones, so that we are effectively being recognized for that care, and so it's not an undue burden. And this is also where paid family medical leave is really important. And this is another big difference between my mom and Mr. Trump, where Mr. Trump is proposing a paid family medical leave policy that only applies to women who have given birth. It's 6 weeks. It would rely on unemployment insurance, and for many Americans that would mean only about $200 a week. But for those of us who start families through foster care or adoption, or for same-sex couples, or for those of us who choose to not have children but who have parents and grandparents or loved ones who are sick, it isn't part of his plan. And my mom believes that we should all have the right to 3 months of paid time off every year if we have children, if we have a loved one that is sick, that we should expect employers to pay at least 2/3 of someone's income, so that we are both being compensated for that kind of through tax credits, but also we don't lose our income while we are kind of being the people that we each feel we need to be to those who are vulnerable in lives, whether they be kind of new children or grandparents that have gotten ill, or kind of anyone else who we know we need to be there for. So thank you for asking about Alzheimer's, and thank you for being a college student asking about Alzheimer's, because this is something that affects millions of American families, and I think often isn't something that is discussed in forums like this. And I'm really grateful that you raised it. So thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, gosh. Yes, because you're just oh, yes. To the man with the microphone this time. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Jacqueline Walker, student at Michigan State. Go Green. And I wanted to first off just appreciate you even coming, because I heard you went to like 6 events today. So applaud to you. Thank you. And I just wanted to share how I appreciate my mom, just like how you appreciate yours. My mom is a really big, important person in my life, and She's really amazing, and I just wanted to just say that you got my vote. Just
Well, and
tell her she got
what's
my
your mom's
vote.
name?
My mom's name is Alicia Womack Walker.
So let's give a shout out for Alicia Womack Walker.
Alicia Womack Walker.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. I feel like we should, someone there was a whole cluster of people raising their hands right there. I don't know. You're going to have to decide who's going to ask a question in your group. Her. Oh, yes. Everyone was raising their hands for you. All right. Yes, right now. So if you shout, I'll repeat your question. Or no, or what? Thank you, man with the microphone.
Oh, hi. Okay, so I'm a Muslim American. I'm from Dearborn. And yes, okay. I came here as a refugee back in 2006, and my parents stayed here for the sole purpose that I could come to the school and get an education. So I was wondering how Hillary was going to help with the Muslim community getting so much hate and with all the hate crime going on. Does she have anything going on for that? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking a question, and thank you to all your friends who raised their hands so that I couldn't ignore you. Life is a team sport. Yeah, amen. Thank you. This is such an interactive audience. Sometimes I say things and no one responds. You ask a question that is relevant to our core values as a country. And you talk about hate crimes. We are seeing the largest number of hate crimes in 2016 against the Muslim American community since we started tracking hate crimes. I do not think that is disconnected from the rhetoric that we are hearing in this election. I didn't think that I would see in my lifetime, I certainly didn't think I would ever see in my children's lifetime, the almost normalization of hate speech that we are hearing from the Republican nominee and that we are not hearing largely disputed from the Republican Party. Go down the appalling list. Islamophobia, misogyny, racism, rhetoric against Americans with disabilities, rhetoric against our veterans, rhetoric against immigrants, rhetoric against specific countries of origin for immigrants. I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm sure there are many that I have forgotten, but I made it through one hand. You know, that is not our country. And I do think that's also what's at stake in this election, is our core values as a country. And, you know, stronger together is not just a slogan for my mother, but love trumps hate isn't a slogan either. So thank you for your question. Oh gosh, over here in my unscientific, yes. Yes, ma'am, you, in the black and white stripes.
Got it? Okay. Hi, I'm Ricky. I'm a senior, and I'm double majoring in political theory and social relations. And as a few people have said, my mother is a huge role model to me, and I grew up hearing no means no. If a man tries to do something to you or a woman tries to do something to anyone that doesn't want it, you say no, and I'm deeply disturbed by what the Trump family has been saying regarding sexual assault and sexual harassment. And on a campus where we have SARV, which is our student education about sexual assault, I just want to know that we're going to have a president that cares about sexual assault and cares what survivors say. And when people come to the court, they're going to be able to have their story heard.
So thank you. And so thank you for raising this. And I love that the man on this side of the audience with the microphone is wearing the Love Trumps Hate button. I didn't even know that. So I think a few things. One, campus sexual assault is not only an issue of criminal justice, it's also an issue of public health. And we absolutely need a president who recognizes that both of those are true. And I'm really grateful that I live in a state where my senator, one of my senators, Senator Gillibrand, has been in the vanguard of this. So one, we need to expect universities, particularly universities that receive public funding, which is almost all of our kind of major colleges and universities of an appreciable size that receive either funding from the state or receive NIH research grants or receive ROTC funds. So universities that receive public funds to absolutely have no means no prevention training as part of freshman orientation. That should be just a given. We need to ensure that the health professionals, which are often the first point of call, it's often not campus police, as I'm sure you know. It's often health professionals in college and university settings that are trained to know how best to respond psychosocially as well as clearly medically. We need more training for campus police, and we also need to recognize that this is a Title IX issue, and that we should expect kind of there to be stronger communication between campus police and the police departments that often ring campuses. Because women or men, and thank you for recognizing it's not only women that suffer from sexual assault, should never feel isolated, should always feel, as you asked in your question, heard, and that should be equally true in a justice sense as in a health and recovery sense, and that we need to work with campuses so that the ecosystem here understands that surviving doesn't stop after a week or a month or a year. There needs to be sufficient long-term support. So thank you for your question. I think we have time for one more question. Yes, ma'am. Here, I'll give you my microphone again.
Thank you for being here, Chelsea. My name is Robin Smith. I am an alumni of Michigan State University, and I am a mother. And I am the mother of 4 children, 2 sons and 2 daughters. My daughter is here with me. She's a freshman in college, and her oldest brother has already graduated. I always thought when they were growing up that the biggest challenge was going to be how we were going to pay for college. But now my greatest concern is will my sons be safe? And black lives do matter. Blue lives matter. And I'm finding that even when our sons, and I say our sons because they're our sons, the sons of this country, that even when our sons are doing the right thing, that sometimes the situation still doesn't turn out right. And what is Clinton going to do about that here in the United States?
Thank you for asking that question. And it is unconscionable and it should be intolerable that any parent feels this way and that any young person feels this way. And so I would say a few things. One, I think it's really important that questions like this are being asked of people who are running for or advocating for people running for president. It's also really important that questions like this be asked of people who are running for or advocating, people who are running for governor and state legislature, for mayor and city council, for district attorney positions, for sheriff positions. And I say that because this is an area where a president can do a lot, but needs partnership at the state and local level to get us to where you don't have that concern, your sons don't have that concern, and candidly, your daughters don't have that concern as well. And so what does that then mean in practice? Well, I think the president, as we certainly have seen with President Obama, does have a lot to do with setting the tone. And we've already talked about kind of the different tone that we're hearing from Mr. Trump. The president can provide, as my mom has advocated, direct federal funding to police departments. So police departments put body cameras and also patrol car cameras as mandatory, but the president cannot require that. So the president can provide funding and then use her platform to candidly shame the police departments that don't mandate body cameras and don't mandate patrol car cameras, but only local governments can mandate body cameras and patrol car cameras. So this is a classic example of the president can lead but not do alone. I think the second thing, and this is something that I talked about earlier, is we need better data. So right now, the most comprehensive database of young African American men that have been killed in our country in police-involved incidences is run by the Guardian newspaper, a newspaper based in the UK. Now, I'm grateful that they've decided to do this work. It's called The Counted. You can go online. You can read the names of the more than 1,100 15 to 34-year-old young African American men that were killed in police-involved incidences in 2015. It's also important to note that Tamir Rice isn't in that count because he was not yet 15. But we don't have a federal database. Now, President Obama's administration is working to fix that, now working to require quarterly reporting from police departments of people who have been killed in police-involved incidences. We need to expand that to people who have been injured in police-involved incidences so that we actually have a full picture, because currently we don't. Now, as an aside, we also don't have a full picture of people that have been sexually assaulted in our country either, because we don't have a standard definition and because the federal government does not require consistent reporting. So we have a lot of work to do to just understand, even with the scope of the challenges that we all are acutely, painfully aware of and that we all should feel equal responsibility for solving. So I think this is such an important question, and we absolutely need strong presidential leadership, but we also need strong local leadership to set this tone between cities, departments, communities, and we need strong leadership at the district attorney's office and the prosecutor's offices, because they're the people who determine whether or not to charge someone with a crime, so whether or not something is actually treated as a miscarriage of justice or not. So thank you for asking your question. As you may or may not know, the first speech my mother gave in her campaign was about criminal justice reform. So this has been a core part of her life's work, as I spoke about earlier, and a core part of this campaign. And as we have tragically been reminded this week, we have much work to do, and the we should be all of us. And I do think there's only one person running for president who believes the we is all of us. So thank you so much. Thank you. Please don't forget to register to vote or turn out to vote on November 8th. Thank you very much.
This is my fight.